What's going on, football fans? It's your host, Bad Takes, with Bad Takes in Football, back with another video for you. Gonna dive into the Todd Monken hiring for the Cleveland Browns head coaching position. But before I do that, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're building an awesome community here where we talk everything NFL football. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure to like and comment on this video. What do you think about them hiring Todd Monken? Should they have gone with Jim Schwartz, their defensive coordinator? Let's dive into today's video. This afternoon, the Cleveland Browns announced that they hired former offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, Todd Monken, the head coaching position for the Cleveland Browns. Todd Monken has accepted that role and is now the head coach and is moving within the division to stay in the AFC North to now coach for Cleveland. I still have a lot of questions and just wondering how this process really went down and why they chose Todd Monken over who I thought was their best option, and it was an internal option in Jim Schwartz, their defensive coordinator. Jim Schwartz has been with Cleveland for 6 years. So it's very easy to say that Jim Schwartz knows this organization in and out. And also, he has led the only aspect of this team that has actually had success in the last 6 years. Yes, he has been able to coach Myles Garrett and some other defensive studs out there. But a big reason why Cleveland has been somewhat relevant or has won games at all in the past couple years has been because of their defense. Their game against the Green Bay Packers, where they held Green Bay under 14 points. That alone is a perfect example of Jim Schwartz being Jim Schwartz and helping this Cleveland Browns team. He was notified by the owner, Jim Haslam, today that they still would like to retain him, but he would not be getting the head coaching position. This has been a drama-filled role for Cleveland to fill out. There has been countless offers as well as countless people taking their name out of consideration for this head coaching position. They have talked about how they've been highly analytical. They've required coaching candidates to write essays. They've had them take personality tests and other analytical aspects that most head coaching positions have not required. And this is a team where, let's be honest, not a lot of people want to coach Cleveland. Not a lot of people want to live in Cleveland. I hate to say that, but that is an absolute fact. It is not a destination place to live, let alone a team to coach for. They've seen very little success in this franchise's history. Kevin Stefanski was able to take them to the playoffs when they had Baker Mayfield, but they haven't been able to make it back to the playoffs since. Again, the only time that they do see success on the field is because of their defensive side. So to a lot of people, it was a no-brainer to have Jim Schwartz as the head coach for this team. Now that Todd Monken is a part of this team, let's talk a little bit about why they probably made this decision. I think the obvious answer is this: the fact that they have not had a good offense in quite some time. When the Cleveland Browns had Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, and Jarvis Landry, their offense was a lot more prolific, but they have not seen success really since then. And so getting an offensive-minded coach probably makes sense from that perspective, because that is the side of the ball they do need the most help on. So from that perspective, I will say it does make sense to hire someone like a Todd Monken over a Jim Schwartz. But on the other side of things, what is going to happen with his defense? Because I think a lot of people are expecting Jim Schwartz to move on after he got snubbed from this role. Jim Schwartz was really expecting this. And I think for a lot of other people, they were expecting him to get the coaching role as well. And so he's probably going to be moving on to a different team. I also have to mention this because I think it's interesting, and we'll see what happens. The Ravens are also looking for a defensive coordinator. Could Jim Schwartz end up switching with Todd Monken and he goes to Baltimore now that Todd Monken is with Cleveland? That actually might be very possible. They could really use a veteran coach like him now that they have Jesse Minter as the head coach, who is much younger. Maybe Jesse doesn't want to have a veteran defensive coordinator so that he can make sure to implement his system and have that defensive coordinator kind of live through what he is looking for. That's definitely a possibility. But again, going back to Cleveland, what do you really expect Todd Monken to do with this team right now? When you look at the quarterback situation, they still have Deshaun Watson for at least one more year. They have Shedeur Sanders, who made a Pro Bowl, and then they have Dillon Gabriel. They also do have a very high draft pick because of their bad record, and so I do expect them to potentially try to look for a quarterback, but the truth of the matter is there's really only one viable first-round quarterback that's available right now, and that's Mendoza out of Indiana, and so he's projected to go number 1 overall to the Raiders. Now, again, what do they really expect from Todd Monken, and how can he help this team? I think first and foremost is he's got to find himself a quarterback that can actually have a system he can implement and be successful in. I'm sure for the time being, it's probably penciled in as Shedeur Sanders, potentially Deshaun Watson, just purely because of the amount of money that they're paying him, and he's actually now healthy. But again, that is not a permanent fix. They also have issues with the fact that they just lost their running back to a broken leg. Quinshon Judkins at the end of the season broke his leg, and so he's probably going to be coming back from injury as well. And so this is not going to be a fast-moving, quick-fix situation for the Cleveland Browns. They are obviously focusing on the offensive side, and they feel like that's where they probably need the most help. So it does, again, make sense from that perspective to hire Monken. But there were other options out there from that perspective. There were other offensive coordinators that were available. And so I'm going to be very curious to learn more about what they say and why they chose Todd Monken from this perspective. Sadly, it might be he was the one that was crazy enough to take this job, because I mentioned it before. They offered this job to at least 6 other coaches before they offered it to Todd Monken, and I'm sure it's more at this point, because that number was released about a week ago. What do you think about this Cleveland Browns team and the hiring of Todd Monken? Do you think it's going to hurt their defense a lot when Jim Schwartz leaves? How is that going to impact Myles Garrett and how he feels about this organization? That's it for me today. Thank you again for watching. This is Bad Takes with Bad Takes in Football, signing out.